let's go ahead and say div class form group without the LG. I don't know why it's prompting me the form group LG. Anyway, label for, so this will be our first field and it will be the title of the recipe. So I will call the input title. The class, I'll say call LG2, and the label needs a control label, and this label will be title. So let's type in title. And now the next thing is the div class call LG6. So this will be 6 columns wide, and here is where we will have our input. So input type text, the class will be form control, the name will be title, the ID will be also title, and the placeholder will be recipe title. Okay, so let's see how this is looking. Okay, we see we have our header and our label and our input. Okay, so this is looking good. So now let's copy all of this and create our second input. Now this input will be a input file. This input will be the one that we can actually select a image. So how does this work? Well, essentially it's the exact same thing, although the input type will be of type file. Okay, so let's change all of this up. So this will be image, the for will be image, so we will call that field image. This will be, the label will be recipe photo, and let's change this to image, and the ID will also be image. There is no placeholder, and let's see how this looks. Okay, so we can see that here we can actually, select the file off of our computer. Okay, good. So let's continue with our inputs. Let's copy again and create another input. So what else do we want to save about a recipe? Well, I'd like to know what kind of cuisine is it. Okay, so this is going to be for cuisine. So what kind of nationality is this dish, or what kind of maybe type of food it is, or something like that. Cuisine, and ID is also going to be cuisine. There we go. Placeholder will be, let's give a suggestion to our users. So let's say, Spanish, American, Indian, etc. Okay. So I guess they get the idea what we're looking for here. Simply what kind of nationality or type of food it is. Okay, good. Next input. Maybe it would be interesting to know whether or not the dish is easy or difficult to create. So let's say difficulty. Okay, 4 was going to be difficulty. Now we're going to delete this input because we're not going to use input. Instead, we're going to use a select box. Okay, so select class, again, form control. Name is going to be difficulty, and the ID is going to be difficulty. And now we have to provide options. So we're just going to limit to 3 options. So easy, medium, or hard. So option, easy, and then medium and hard. Okay, so there we go. So let's go back and see how this looks. Okay, so here we have our select, and this is easy, medium, hard. Okay, good. And next, we want to know what the preparation time. If you go to recipe websites, you'll see that they all list the recipe the preparation time and the cooking time. So we will open up directly two more inputs and say this will be the prep time. Let's call it prep underscore time, so like that it's easier to read. And this will be preparation time. And the type will be of text. And the name will be prep underscore time, and the ID again, prep underscore time. And here we'll say, to kind of standardize the input, let's hint to the user that we're expecting this number in minutes. In minutes, okay, so in minutes. And the same thing for cooking time. So this will be for cooking time. Then here the label will be cooking time. And type text, form control name is going to be cooking underscore time. And the ID again, cooking time. Great. And again, in minutes in the placeholder to indicate or hint the user that we're expecting this number in minutes. Okay, so hopefully you're seeing here that we will, by having some kind of standardized information, so here we're standardizing the information about how difficult it is to actually cook this recipe, and here we are standardizing information about how long it can take to prepare the recipe and to cook the recipe. We will be able to filter out results using the free text search based on these variables. So we can say, I want all recipes containing, let's say, lettuce, which are medium to prepare. Okay, so in this way we can go ahead and filter out results, and it's a really nice way of creating filters and so on, and essentially just give a better experience to our users and adapting ourselves to how they may want to search our database or our index of recipes. Okay, so let's continue. The final two inputs we will need are the ingredients and the directions. So the directions are kind of like the instructions. Well, they are the instructions, okay? Okay, so let's say these are going to be our ingredients. So this will be for ingredients, and the label will be ingredients. And the type is going to be, now we are not going to use a input here, we're going to use a text area. So text area. Class form control, this is always the same. ID is going to be ingredients. The name is going to be ingredients also. And now we want to add a placeholder. I'll actually do this in new line so you guys see it better. We need to add a placeholder, and I'm going to close this off. And we're going to do a very, very basic input for the ingredients, because usually, if you think about it, ingredients are composed of three things, right? So when you have an ingredient, you have to say how much you want of something, what unit is that measured in, and the actual ingredient itself. So example, we can say we want 10, which is the amount, grams, which is the unit, and salt, which is the ingredient. So 10 grams of salt. There are three components to an ingredient. And to make things simple, I don't want to open up a lot of inputs, because I mean, if we wanted to do this properly, we would have to dedicate much more time on to how to do it properly. And the proper way to do it is to open up new inputs per ingredient using JavaScript, because I mean, when someone posts a recipe, you don't know how many ingredients they want to put into that recipe. So the best thing to do is start off with one input and have it delimited by these three different variables. So the amount, the unit, and the ingredient itself. And then once the user fills in that input, JavaScript would automatically add another input under that so that the user can type in a new input. And like that until they have filled in all of their ingredients. We're not going to do that because that's quite a bit of work on JavaScript, and it's a bit more advanced than I want to get into in this course. But I encourage you to experiment that idea and see how you could implement it using JavaScript and jQuery after we have completed this course, because that would be a much better user experience than what we're going to do now. But now, the advantage of doing this the way we're going to do it now is we're going to keep it simple, which is always a nice thing. And also we will learn how to convert strings into lists. So that's one thing we still haven't touched upon, and this will give us the opportunity to learn how to do that, which for me is very useful because in any project I'm always converting lists to strings and strings to lists and converting them back and forth, because it's just a really handy way of gathering data and converting from one format to another. You'll get what I mean in just a second when we actually go ahead and implement the request handler that processes this data and saves it to the database, okay? So for the meantime, we need to establish, since we only have one big text area, we need to establish a certain protocol or certain rules by which you must follow in order for our application to understand your data. So let's say, actually I'm going to refresh so that I have my text box here. And let's say if I wanted to, for example, say 30 grams salt, okay, so this would be ingredient, and let's say 200 grams beef. Well, I know this is very simple, but what we can do is we can split each row. So we can, if this is the entire string, we can separate each row, and we'll figure out how to do this in the next video. And then we can grab each item by separate by splitting them using the space. So imagine the space is what delimits the amount, the unit, and the ingredient, okay? So we're going to keep it simple like this. And like this, we will learn how to split the different rows, and also how to split the strings into lists and extract their individual items, okay? Now I know this leaves a lot of error for the user if they don't understand this, which they in the most likely case they won't understand how to input. But the point here is to see how we can index a recipe and actually, you know, learn about using strings and lists and changing format from one to the other, and not so much about, you know, being the most correct and user friendly as possible. Okay. Okay, so let's go back. Having said that, let's give an example. So let's say 10 grams salt to give an example. So I'll just refresh and see we have our example here as a placeholder. Okay, and the last one, which will also be a text area, will be directions. Okay, so the label will be directions, and the ID will be directions, and the name will also be directions. Now, usually directions are a list of instructions. So first, fry the onions. Second, put the chicken into the oven for 20 minutes, okay? So on and so forth. So it's a list of instructions. So the way we are going to expect these instructions is each instruction should be in a separate row, okay? Or in separate lines. So something in the sorts of this. Peel apples. Put chicken into the oven for 20 minutes. Add apples to chicken, etc. Okay, so each row or each line is an instruction. So the way we're going to then interpret this is we are going to grab each line. So we're going to grab the whole string and split it by lines. Okay. So each line will be an instruction. So it's similar to this case, but in this case we have to even split each line into its 3 components, okay? So this case will be easier. Okay, good. So now the last thing we need is the button to actually send this information. So this is going to paste this. We don't have a label when we have a button. And we can change this to be call LG offset 2 and call LG 10, just to give it much more space than it really needs. And then we need a button of type submit, and the class is going to be btn primary to give it that blue color, and the text is going to be post recipe. Okay, so let's see how this looks. Good. So now if you click, we should send the post request to this URL, but nothing should happen because we have yet not implemented it, okay? Okay, good.